All right, beautiful black people, I want to start this video out with a very, very special request. A very, very special request. And it's right there in the lower third. Let me read it for you. Black people, please stop relying on entertainers for political or legal guidance, analysis. Please stop doing that. Instead, here's what I would love for you to do. Seek political and legal analysis from qualified experts. Let me read this again. Black people, please stop relying on entertainers, content creators for political or legal expertise or guidance. Instead, rather than that, please seek political and legal analysis and expertise from qualified experts. You don't go to the legal and political experts for advice about medicine, for advice about engineering, for advice about being a chef, for advice about being a mechanic, being a rapper, being a football player. No. You go to those respective experts. For football, you go to the football player. For engineering, you go to the engineer. For medicine, you go to the medical doctor. But for some reason in our community, we tend to value the expert opinion of the wrong people for the wrong topics. Think about it this way. A fish in water is one of the most beautiful creatures you've ever seen. They can swim like nobody's business because they're doing what they have expertise to do. Take that fish, put that fish in dirt, and that fish will struggle and lay there and die. Nothing beautiful about what you're going to witness when that fish is lying there in dirt. Same thing. Take a bird out of the sky. Let's say a hawk, an eagle, a crow, a sparrow. Take them out of the sky, put them in water. And you're just not going to see the genius. You're not going to see a creature come to the very top of what they're doing because they're in the wrong area. Yet we black people do that all the time. We listen to people for political and legal analysis and guidance who have no experience, no training, no knowledge, none of that. They just run their mouths. They haven't been in school. They haven't been tested. They have no experience. Like in the legal field, they've never litigated a case, never represented anyone, haven't read Supreme Court precedent. They know nothing about the law. Yet we value their opinion, even though they are a comedian. That is the reason why our community is so easily misled oftentimes. Especially certain ones in our community. And you have the Stephen A's, you have the Charlamagnes. Pharrell has now offered his opinion on politics. Now, there is one entertainer, former rapper. I don't know much about this guy. His name is Joe Budden. I've looked at a little bit of his content. And he got into a spat with the Native Land podcast not too long ago. I've been intending to do a video, but this is a perfect time to do it. And Tiffany Cross, one of the hosts of the Native Land podcast, was essentially saying that black folks are anti-intellectual. And part of the reason she was saying that is because a whole lot of folks go, as I'm saying now, to the podcast. A whole lot of black people go to the podcast of people who have no expertise in politics, in the legal area, in history, and yet they flock there and take the advice of those folks. Now, Joe Budden is an exception. There's something he does I like so much. And that is, he says up front in his podcast, I love this, I respect this. He says, don't take what we're saying seriously. In other words, don't come here for political advice. Don't come here for legal advice. We are just jaw-jacking. That's an old expression for running their mouths, having a good time, talking about, cultural things, hip-hop things, who has the best album out, who has made the best rap song recently, who is really banging in the entertainment field. He tells you that up front. That is his bailiwick. And he is doing very, very, very well at that. I respect that. What I don't respect is when you take these folks who have no expertise in this area, they don't give that disclaimer, and here they go running their mouths, misleading people. And when you hear them talk, if you have expertise, I've heard people try to give legal advice and legal analysis, and so much of politics is legal already. Politics quite often are simply policies that are coming from various laws. And these folks try to explain it and never one time in their life sat in anybody's law class, sat in anyone's political science class. There is an actual discipline. There's a degree. There's a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a PhD degree in political science. That's a whole science. That's a field. You have to have expertise in that. But some of these content creators just believe, hey, it can't be that difficult. And they give their analysis about these very important things, mislead a whole lot of African-American people. And MAGA and the GOP and Trump and Steve Bannon, they take advantage of it. It hurts me to my heart. Hurts me to my heart. It's just amazing. Now, take all those folks I just mentioned. Stephen A. Smith, a freaking genius. When it comes to, I don't know this man, but when it comes to two things, I see his brilliance. I see his skill set. It's abundantly clear, just given his success. And that is sports commentary. Okay. And his business acumen. I mean, the guy makes a whole lot of money for what he does. So he has good business sense. If he's talking about business, sit down and listen to Stephen A. I heard him say something once that received a lot of criticism. He said, every day I wake up, I wake up thinking, how am I going to make my bosses more money? A lot of people took that and was offended by it. When I thought about it, I said, that is not a bad perspective, except that I wish he would, and everyone, in fact, would wake up and the first thing they got on their mind is the Lord. But I know Stephen A. is a confessing Christian, so I know God is in his life, all right? From what I understand, he attends the Cultural Christian Center, I think it's called, A.R. Bernard, a very excellent pastor. But when it comes to those two areas, man, listen to Stephen A. He's been doing it a minute. But oh my God, when he talks about politics, for me, it's like listening to someone scrape their nails, their fingernails across a blackboard. He's not wrong on everything. He's not wrong on everything. But because this is not his area, he misses the nuances. And sometimes he's just flat out wrong. But brilliant otherwise. Who else? Charlamagne. Hip hop culture. He can sit at that mic and talk about that all day and again, just sort of shoot the breeze, jaw jack all day long. He knows his audience. They love the show, The Breakfast Club. They have millions of people showing up. But when it comes to politics, quite often, again, it can just be terrible. It can just be terrible. It can be confusing. It can be very ambiguous. It can be misleading at times. But obviously the guy has a really serious skill set when it comes to doing the radio thing. I've heard him call himself the radio guy. And he obviously also has sharp business acumen. These guys are successful. I'm not attacking them. They have their expertise. I just wish they would stay in it. Okay? I just wish they would stay in it or do what Joe Budden does. Just tell folks at the beginning, don't take what we're saying here. We're just messing around. This has nothing to do with politics. Back to Joe Budden for a minute. You know, he said during that spat he had with the Native Land podcast, he said that he has nothing to do with that, you know, super black stuff, that kumbaya stuff. I think he's talking about civil rights, I believe. Well, I would say this to Joe Budden. It is the work of the civil rights movement, civil rights leaders, Joe, that opened the doors that you are currently walking in now and enjoying your success. That's what I would say to Joe. I get it. I respect and I appreciate the fact that you know your lane and you don't try to get into other lanes. But when you said that, it sounded like it was dismissive of civil rights. I don't know that's what it was, but it sounded that way. And if so, I just would remind you that the hard work of folks, black folks who came before you, opened those doors. And I'm sure you do things in your own way to help the cause, the black struggle. I'm sure about that. All right, so all of that leads me up to Pharrell. Pharrell. He's on social media making some points. And we're going to listen to that video. You've probably already heard it, but I want to talk about it. I have this transcript, and I want to make some comments about what he said. All right? So let's go to another screen.
As we look at what's going on, the current political climate, I'm just saying I don't want to turn anybody off, but I hate politics. Like, despise them. It is it's a magic trick that it's not real. I don't believe in either side, because I think when you pick a side, you are only, you are inadvertently supporting division. Yeah, it's not a popular point of view, but I just gotta say, like, think about it. The wells are drying up, and then, okay, now the diversity's off the table, now equity's off the table, now inclusion's off the table. So that makes me ask myself, okay, so how do we survive? Well, are there black people here tonight? And in your heart, do you think for what it is that you do and who you are, do you think you're the best? Okay, so do you want the job because you're black or because you're the best? Do you want someone to support your startup because you're black or because you're the best? Right, so I think now for me it's about us having the best ambition. That's the reason why you should support these businesses. Yes, they happen to be black and brown, but it should be based on the thesis that we're the best, not because we are a total shade of a skin color. That's a point of view that I have now that I'm resting on. And if diversity, equity, and inclusion ever comes back in style, cool. But in the meantime, I'm going to focus on being the best because I can bank on that. Because that's what's going to get you the position. Where, I don't want you to give me anything. I want you to panic and not let me out the room because I'm the best.
All right, so we just heard from Pharrell in his own words. All right. And let me start by saying, as I said with the other entertainers, Pharrell is brilliant. He's very talented. He is extremely gifted with all sorts of music abilities. So when it comes to producing music, then sit down and listen to everything Pharrell has to tell you. He knows what he's doing. And like with the other entertainers, his skill set is not limited to just music production, but also business. He's a very successful business person. So once again, if Pharrell is trying to school you on business, on music, absolutely, he is an expert. He provides the expertise you would need to get where you're trying to go. And third of all, he's a fashion guru. All right? So if he's talking about fashion, if he's talking about business, if he's talking about music production, Pharrell is your man. But clearly from his political comments just then, you don't need to seek Pharrell his political commentary or guidance because he doesn't know what he's talking about. And he doesn't even take his own advice. So when he says you should aim for being the best, then I would say to Pharrell, then aim to be the best at political analyst, at being the best political analyst that you could be, right? Before giving political advice. But anyway, I have the transcript to everything that Pharrell said. I want to look at some of these things verbatim, okay? Because they are, quite frankly, off the rails. Again, when it comes to music, when it comes to fashion, business, Pharrell is the expert. I would gladly sit down. If that was what I was interested in, I would gladly sit down and listen to everything he has to say because he is a proven success story in all three of those areas. But politics, no. All right. Let's look at what he actually said. He said, as we look at what's going on in the current political climate, I'm just saying to don't want to turn anybody, y'all. All right. I hate politics. It's a magic trick that is not real. Let me address that. Politics is not a magic trick. Politics is a science. Again, one can get a bachelor's, master's, and PhD in political science. That's a whole field by itself. It is not a magic trick. It is not based on abracadabra. It is based on science. It is based on policies. It is based on the law. So when he says that, he's just factually incorrect about that. And then he says it's not real. That's absolutely false. Politics governs our lives. Literally, it governs our lives. What's the old saying? You may not do politics, but politics will certainly do you. That's because politics is involved in every aspect of our life. So it is very, very real. It is not a magic trick. All right. It is something that we should take very seriously as African Americans, because our rights as African American people oftentimes hinges on what happens in the field of politics. So this just shows you that Pharrell, when he's talking politics, he's like a bird in the water, or he's like a fish in dirt. You don't see that same genius and brilliance that you do in those other areas. And so therefore, don't take Pharrell seriously when he's talking about politics. I prefer he would do what Joe Budden does and just tell you up front. Just tell you up front, don't take me serious on politics. Go seek out the experts, the people who know politics. Go talk to them. They're the ones who can advise you on politics. Now, of course, he, like all of us, have our personal opinion, and he has the right to express them. But you must be smarter than to take them seriously. All right, that's the point I'm making here. All right, what else did he say? Yes, it's not a popular point of view, but I just got to say, I think about it. The wells are drying up. And then, okay, now the diversity's off the table, not equity off the table. Now inclusion's off the table. So that makes me ask myself, okay, so how do we survive? Well, are there black people here tonight? So first of all, let's correct the record. Trump issued executive orders that did do away with DEI in the federal government, all right, throughout federal agencies. But that does not mean DEI has been eliminated across society. Now, he has used his bully pulpit, that is Trump, to try to get even private corporations and universities and so on to also abandon DEI. And many have done that, but not all. And I fully suspect that once Trump is gone, I fully suspect that these corporations will once again pick up DEI, because after all, they depend on our dollars. We spend about $2 trillion in this economy. We contribute about $2 trillion every year in this economy. They want those dollars. We saw that with Target, right? When Reverend Jamal Bryant called on the black community to boycott Target, it worked. It had a profound impact on that corporation. And in the meantime, what we need to be doing is we need to be rebuilding our own economic base, right? Our black economic base. You know, like with the Birmingham bus boycott, the Montgomery bus boycott, when they boycotted that busing company, the thing that they failed to do was to start their own busing company. They went right back to that white-owned bus company without starting their own. That's what they should have done. That should have been a wake-up call to say they need us. They need our dollars for the profit, right? White dollars oftentimes will help corporations break even, but they need that black dollar to be profitable. And so they should have just said, okay, let's just buy some buses and create our own bus company. And that's what we need to do here. If these corporations start following DEI, throughout the country, then, Trump's anti-DEI policies, then we say, okay, fine. We're going to use this opportunity. This is the best opportunity that we have to rebuild our own economic base. So DEI has not been eliminated across American society. It has in the federal government because Trump has authority as president over the federal government, but not over private corporations. Now, once again, he used his bully pulpit to get many of them to acquiesce to his wishes, but not all of them. All right, so that's first of all. Then he goes on to say, yeah, absolutely. And in your heart, do you think for what it is that you do and what you are, do you think you're the best? Okay, so do you want the job because you're black or because you're the best? All right, I'll answer Pharrell's question. We want the job because we're black and the best. All right, the goal should be being the best, top, first and foremost. But also, we deserve opportunities, a fair opportunity, because we're black. And that's not a handout. That's based on the United States Constitution. That's based on the Declaration of Independence. That's based on natural law. But it's also based on the fact that we laid the economic foundation for this country. And so we're old and have never been paid compensation, reparations. And so there is a certain entitlement that we have as black people. And by the way, white people feel entitled all the time. That's why they're fighting so hard, because they feel that they're entitled to run, control, and own everything. So that same sense of entitlement that we hear coming from them, we should have it ourselves. All right? We're entitled to a fair playing field. We're entitled to equal protection under the law. We're entitled to be treated like everyone else. And some of that entitlement comes from the fact that we have been, in the past, discriminated against, which has resulted in us having tremendous disparities and gaps. There is a wealth gap. There is an educational gap. There's a healthcare gap. There are these gaps that are built into American society because of the past, because of evils from the past. So we deserve these opportunities because our country is founded upon the principle, although it hasn't applied to us all the time, that all men are created equal and are endowed with certain inalienable rights, among them the right to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. Constitution talks about life, liberty, and property. But we have certain inalienable rights, the Declaration of Independence says, which means nobody can take those from us. Again, it hasn't always applied to us, but they're still in the birthing documents of this country. So because we're black and because we're the best. But the problem is being the best, especially when you're black, doesn't guarantee that you're going to get what you deserve. All right? We are inbred with this ideal as black people, we have to be twice as good. So oftentimes we are the best. and still get mistreated. So being the best is not enough, Pharrell. Being the best is not enough. And when you take in consideration how far many of us have come from in comparison to where many of them came from, let me put it this way. It's not how far you've come, it's how far you've come from. All right? It's not how far you've come, it's how far you've come from. If in the case, for example, you were born in money like Trump was, then you're supposed to end up being wealthy. You started out a millionaire. But when you start out as an African American in this country and you acquire wealth, quite often you have come much farther than the white person who started out wealthy, whose family was wealthy. And so you being the best means a whole lot more than what it means for a white person who started out on the 50-yard line. And a lot of us African Americans, when we start, we're not only not on the field, we're not even in the stadium. So we have to work our way up to getting into the stadium and then getting on the field. Meanwhile, they're already on the 70-yard line, if I can borrow from the game of football here. And then we have a history here of being the best, Pharrell, and then they coming and taking it from us. Right? Like Black Wall Street in Tulsa. And by the way, don't think that Tulsa was the only Black Wall Street. There were other Black Wall Streets. You go in most major cities, and there is that place in that city that was once a Black Wall Street that today has been stolen, taken away from the African American community. Here in the Dallas area, for example, there is a stretch of downtown called Deep Ellum, which is where blacks used to have very successful music businesses and companies and so on. And then if you were to go over to South Dallas, which is just a few miles away from downtown, again, that was a thriving community, which today has been neglected and so on. And you got that in so many places. So being the best is absolutely our top goal. It should be at all times. Be the best, as Dr. King said. Be the best. But we also in this country here as African Americans, there are certain opportunities that we should get because of the evil that we've experienced in the past. And all of us should get fair opportunity. So Pharrell, come on. And let me go back because he said something else here about politics that I got to address too. He said that politics, if you're involved in politics, you are inadvertently supporting division. Well, yeah, because you're having to pick sides. We're in a country that has been against us ever since we've been here. And so, yeah, you have to pick the side. You have to pick the side that's in opposition to that white supremacy, that systemic racism. So you can't be neutral. I highly suspect that Pharrell says some of this because he's a successful business person. And as Michael Jordan said, Republicans buy sneakers also. In other words, Jordan was sort of apolitical throughout his career because he didn't want to offend people who would buy his sneakers. So I suppose some of that is involved in Pharrell saying that politics are divisive. They are. They are. And he doesn't want to get involved because, once again, he needs folks buying his music, streaming his music, his fashion, and whatever other business interests he has. We see that a lot with black wealthy folks. We see it a lot. All right. So yeah, we need to absolutely be the best, but we deserve opportunity as well because we're black. We're entitled to it. As they say they're entitled because they're white, we're more so because we laid the foundation for this country. So he goes on to say, so I think now for me, it's about us having the best ambition. That's the reason why you should support these businesses. Yes, they happen to be black and brown, but it should be based on the thesis that we're the best, not because we're a total shade of a skin color. That's a point of view that I have now that I am resting on. And if diversity, equity, inclusion ever comes back in style, cool. Then he says, but in the meantime, I'm going to focus on being the best because I can think on that, because that's what's going to get you to position where you know. I don't want you to give me anything. I want you to panic and not let me out the room because I'm the best. Okay, so that's spoken like a businessman, right? Right? I understand. But we should patronize black businesses just because they're black. Of course, find the best black business, but we should patronize black businesses. We get a lot of calls here at our law firm from African-American people who tell us we're looking for an African-American lawyer. And yeah, I mean, thank you. Yeah, because, you know, you want someone in the courtroom who understands you, who understands your culture. I can remember many clients where me knowing what it's like being black enabled me to better advocate for that person. Right? And when because we represent whites, we represent Latinos, when we're representing a white or Latino person, what we tend to do is we try to learn about the context of their situation, their culture. So again, we can go in there fully understanding what this person is experienced contextually so that we can advocate better for them. It's just that with black folks, we don't have to do that because we grew up in the same context. All right. I remember we had a client who had a white client who was disabled in a wheelchair. Well, there were some similarities there in that he experienced discrimination because he's in a wheelchair. We experienced discrimination because of our skin color. So we understood. We kind of understood where he was at and why he was experiencing this type of discrimination and how he felt about that and how to advocate for him, how to make his situation more understanding or understandable to the folks we're fighting against and the judge and jury. The same with Latinos, when we represented Latinos. they experience a certain level of discrimination as well. So we understand that as African-American attorneys. And so when a black person walks in, we don't have to try to understand their culture because we are African-American, but we are able to relate to these other people because oftentimes the situations that they're experiencing has its own level of injustice. And coming from this place of having fought injustice all our lives, we get it. So you should patronize black businesses because they're black. Take, for example, a doctor. I mean, there are studies that show that you're likely to receive better health care from a black doctor if you're black. There's that cultural connection that you have with that black doctor, right? That you don't have with the Indian doctor, Indian American doctor, or with the white American doctor quite often. It's not necessarily true, but studies have shown it is generally true. So yes, you should patronize black businesses just because they're black. That's what they do. Now again, yes, obviously try to find the best black doctor, the best black lawyer, the best black plumber, the best, person in their field, because being best is important. But for him to say you got to choose between being best or black is naivete to the highest. I understand what Pharrell is saying. I get it. He's dealing with high dollar situations. And quite often, he doesn't even get a look if he's not considered the best. I understand that. But there should also be, again, a basis for us African Americans who laid the foundation for this country to receive some opportunities just because this country is still a very racist country and because of past racism. So Pharrell, these other folks, Stephen A., Charlamagne, heard recently Nicki Minaj made some statements at the UN. I'm just advising you, black folks, when it comes to politics, when it comes to the law, when it comes to understanding history, those things that inform you about who you and what you should support, don't go to these entertainers. Don't go to the entertainers. Go to them for laughs, for enjoyment, for entertainment, but not for your political advice. Some of these content creators are just really misleading people quite often because they themselves have been misled by the people they listen to. And so then they perpetuate that disinformation. Find the experts. I don't believe we would have Trump right now if more black folk would have taken the advice that experts in the field of law and politics were offering via social media. We wouldn't have Trump right now. We would not be dealing with much of this because Kamala would be in office right now. All right, so we got to stop relying on entertainers. And that includes athletes, rappers, and so on for political or legal advice and guidance. Instead, we got to find the experts. We got to value the opinion of the experts. Like last year, I remember when Obama went and spoke with some African-American men, there were African-American men across the country who were saying, you talking down to us. We don't want to hear anything from you. Well, hold on. This was the first black president. He knows politics. He did a lot of really great things for the African-American community. He's a smart guy. He's a brilliant dude. He has a law degree from Harvard. Was a sitting U.S. senator, was a state senator. He understands the Constitution. There is much that our community can learn from folks like Barack Obama, and he sits at the top of the pile. So put away this thing. You know, oftentimes we have this thing that, you know, if it's black, if a black person is saying it, well, he's just one of us. I mean, he ain't nobody. That nigga ain't nobody. Who care? Who don't care nothing about that Negro? Come on, folks. Sometimes we can be our own worst enemies. Come on here. Please, we've been taught that way. We've been trained to see each other that way. We've been trained to see ourselves that way. And then we project that upon other African-American people. The water is not colder just because a white person offers you that water. That's internalized racism. Right? All right. I am Reverend and Civil Rights Attorney Augustus Corbett. Thank you for watching this video from the beginning to the end. And as always, stay woke. And as always, stay woke.